So ladies, gentlemen, 11th Street kids, welcome to my Peacemaker Season 2, Episode 7 recap, review, and breakdown. And right out the gate here, it's crazy to say that we're at the penultimate episode of Season 2, and I think we can all agree that things got pretty nuts in those final minutes of this episode. And also just this, of course, sets things up for a finale that has me so fascinated as to where things will go with what Rick Flag Sr. is trying to explore there. So I just want to jump into it. However, I will say right now that I'm going to be diving into a little theory ramble trailer breakdown for episode 8, the finale, at the end of this video. So stick around for that, as it really does feel like anything could go down in that finale. And we know that it ties into James Gunn's Man of Tomorrow. But for now, episode 8 picks up where we left off, really, with Chris and Harcourt being surrounded by Emilia and the Argus agents wanting to arrest them. So in this moment, I was kind of like, Jesus. So Harcourt mentions how there were copies of that book, which, that book. Sure, Peacemaker missed that, and that's like, all right. Peacemaker, maybe not so interested in books, might not look at the front cover and the symbol on that, but to miss the giant ass mural in Argus, really? That's just a bit like, sure, like funny Peacemaker humor, because the show, I do want to make this clear before, because some people get upset with criticism. I just want to put that out there. You're watching a review, and I'm not trying to seem cocky here, but things like this leave me a little bit conflicted, because it is funny Peacemaker humor, and, as I said, the show is owning how, in of itself, this is an absurd thing, and so that's kind of the gag here, right? So sometimes with moments like this, I do feel a bit conflicted about it, because I guess, what it is for the sake of entertainment, it abandons what would probably really be the logical reality of the situation, where he would have noticed that. Like, sure, Peacemaker might not read a book, I can look past that, but not to see that, bro. Like, yeah, so the show kind of forsakes a lot of things for the sake of a comedic joke, and sometimes I'm all right with that a little bit, depending on what it is, but here it's like got the critical part of my brain a bit like, I don't know, and I know there's lots of you out there being like, but you're nitpicking, me. I'm like, but come on, you must see that side of it, right? And then, boom, they start taking out the security left, right, and center, and then they start legging it out of the building. I love that little look that Harcourt gives Chris. It's like this kind of romantic dynamic duo of like badassery as they're legging it out and getting right into the great intro of Peacemaker Season 2, which I still haven't skipped a single time, even upon rewatch. And so then we're back with both Vigilantes, where the Earth X Vigilante explains the whole Sons of Liberty thing, the Resistance, and the alternate history of Earth X. And Adrian then realizes that he came over with Adebayo, and then they get going, which is when we kind of cut back to Adebayo, still fleeing for her life, which is when Judomaster appears to help her. And the way he appears, damn, as he says, zippity zap bitches, and he fries everyone who is swimming after Adebayo in the pool. And that little scream he does while he was doing it, just kind of gets me. I love that kind of little battle cry that he does in fights, but that battle cry in this moment as he was frying people, there's just something that Nutley just does so well whenever he has a moment like that. And also, this apparently isn't even the first time he's done something like this. But I do have to say, this is another scene in where it's like, hey, yeah, I still enjoyed this scene. I let that be known because it was entertaining. But it's another moment in the script where the writing kind of dips a bit for the sake of a comedic gag moment, right? So what I mean by that is, why did Adebayo jump into the pool? Like, why the hell didn't she just kind of run around it? Now, I can dismiss that for, like, obviously she's in, like, a mad amount of panic, so at this point, she just jumps into a pool, which, okay, she's under a lot of distress, very clearly. But, okay, even if we toss that aside, I mean, all of these people are pretty dumb, because even if Adebayo got in the pool, they could have just run around it or, like, surrounded her in the pool, and she would have nowhere to go. So, yeah, again, it's more the thing where you kind of just throw some logic out the window with writing scenes like this for the sake of getting a hilarious moment, a hilarious Judomaster moment. But back with Peacemaker and Harcourt, they jetpack out of the building, not so elegantly, and escape on the peace cycle. motorcycle. Love the soundtrack kicking in this moment. Now, this is where we get something fairly interesting from the Earth X Auggie, saying that he never told Chris or Keith about this, but years ago he saw his doppelganger, so the DCU's Auggie, through the library. And he says something so messed up in the sense that when he saw him, there was just something not right about him.
Something cruel, like he came from a world that was a dark version of ours.
So I was like, oh, god damn. But like in this moment, I was thinking, does this explain how Auggie got the Peacemaker gear and helmets? This kind of implies to me that Auggie was maybe going around poking his nose into different doorways in the QEC and just stealing helmets whenever he could get it. I don't know if we're going to get a much bigger explanation of this one day. Auggie also mentions to Keith that he needs to get to the other Peacemaker before the authorities do, because if they tell anybody that they have a dimensional portal in their house, they're screwed. And, you know, that really does make sense, because whether it's on our Earth and Argus want the QC, you can imagine what this alternate Earth and Earth X, how they would feel not being in possession of something that could allow them to go to different worlds. Like, you might even get, like, they might want that technology to do a bit of a Crisis on Earth X thing, where they go into different realities and conquer their worlds and make them just like the Earth X America, if you know what I mean. So at this point in the episode, we have Auggie and Keith going to suit up. Eagly brings a piece of string to Economos. Judomaster and Adebayo play Scrabble. Not Scrabble, but Scrabble. I also really liked Adebayo's scenes with Judomaster and how they got along. It's just, it goes to show that Adebayo is just so lovely that she can really get along with anyone. Like, even touching the heart of Judo. Like, you could tell Judomaster liked hanging out with her. Peacemaker and Harcourt are having a moment on the peace cycle where it feels as though, even though the police are after them, it doesn't matter. It just seems like Harcourt, with things out there in the open now, just a lot more, no pun intended here, but she just really seems at peace, to the point of where it doesn't really matter what happens next because she's got Chris back. So this is when Keith and Auggie land. They're surrounded by the police as well, but no, they actually blow up all the cop cars and murder all of the police officers, which is pretty insane. Like, I didn't really expect that to happen. Now, meanwhile, with Rick Flag Sr. and Bordeaux, they bring Sidney Happerson, who everyone kind of knew it was going to be him, out of prison, as this is who Luthor recommended to help them. And this was pretty damn straightforward. They bring him to the communications hub that Luthor used in Superman, and it's as though, by the way, that we're kind of just seeing the set or the kind of sound stage that is being made out to look like it's an Argus warehouse kind of thing where they're storing the control hub. I like how Flag threatened Sidney, saying, well, I could just tell Luthor that his boy let him down, and he definitely didn't want to deal with that at all in the future, so he starts scanning. And then boom, you know, kind of right away, he has a ping in Evergreen, and it's an open portal. He mentions how it's not their tech, as their tech always had a wobble, but this alien tech, well, it's secure, which Flag, as we know, is really happy about, but he really wants that because A, yeah, to get Peacemaker, but B, we know that he has this bigger plan to, you know, for the benefit of us all. And we still don't know what that is. And that really ties into what the teaser trailer shows us for the finale. But it could kind of end up screwing them over because, you know, what they're doing with the QC after the end of this episode could really attract whatever bigger thing gets introduced in Man of Tomorrow. But more about that at the end of this episode. Now, Flag Sr. said that he may keep Sidney around, so that makes sense as to how we're probably just going to see him again, maybe even in the finale. And this is where things really kick off. And obviously, they want Chris to explain what is going on here. And he tells them they stumbled around here by chance. He explains how, in his own history, Keith died when he was a kid. And you can see, when the scene cuts to Keith, like, he's just barely containing his anger here, and I think anyone could relate to this. Like, even with the way things played out, like, I have a brother myself. If I had another dimensions version of my brother saying that he killed my brother, I don't know if I'd have kept a lid on it, like the way Keith kind of was at this moment, even though Auggie really had to try and reel him in there. And this is where you start to realize, like, oddly, Auggie kind of seems to listen to Chris, saying that it was essentially an accident. And then we get a knock at the door from the Evergreen PD, and we have the return of Detective Larry Fitzgibbon, just the Earth X version now, who you may remember from, well, you should remember from Season 1. Auggie then says once they get all their friends back, they can go through the QEC and never return, but Keith can't quite accept kept Chris just walking out of here scot-free. And Auggie just seems, as we've gone over, a bit more accepting of how things came to be, because even though he loved his son, he knew what the other Peacemaker was like, and that has been something drip-fed to us all season. And man, we even get to the point in where Harcourt calls Auggie out for, well, being what they all are in this alternate America, but this is where we hear Auggie express that he didn't create the problems that are in this Earth X world, and he doesn't agree with them.
Don't call me that.
And right as he's giving his speech, we have Vigilante enter the building through the glass and start shanking the living crap out of him. Now, I know people wondering which Vigilante this is. I think it was the Earth X Vigilante. Now, I know we heard our Vigilante saying, well, you know, he said that line. I can't remember exactly what it was, which makes it seem like it was him. But I think that's him just trying to defend or give a reason as to why the Earth X version did that. To me, it makes more sense that the Earth X Vigilante did this because he was actively hating this Peacemaker in this Earth. He was a part of the Sons of Liberty, so I think he would be way more prepared to do that, even though both Vigilantes are technically psychopaths. But yeah, that's my read on the situation. But goddamn, Vigilante, or Vigilantes. Keith is absolutely distraught, and to be fair, so is Chris, because he's realizing that this version of his dad, yes, albeit living under this alternate history America, he made it clear that he didn't agree with it, which makes it really head-fecky for him to deal with. You know, we were speculating here on the channel that it would be easier for Chris to leave this dimension because it's like, oh, well, look, Earth X version of my brother and dad. Maybe I can put that behind me a bit easier. But then you learn that it's not that black and white, right? So this Auggie even kind of implied, as we were getting into earlier, how he was even pissed off, saying,
Why the fuck were you doing that, Keith?
when Keith revealed that he chased after Adebayo, and how that's not what they do.
Jesus, haven't you boys ever learned anything?
I do think it's important to point out, though, that even though Gunn says that Auggie on Earth X is anti-Earth X, you could say, he's still, at the end of the day, complacent in the Earth X regime. It's not like the episode went out of its way to explain if he ever helped out the Sons of Liberty. He just kind of seems to be a superhero who disapproves of Earth X and has kind of kept his head down to not be noticed for that. Perhaps he maybe sees the futility in it if there's people like an Earth X Superman, like Overman out there, and never wanted to risk his son, so he just kept on fighting criminals and monsters and the like to do, in his words, what he felt like he could. But it kind of seems like his sons grew up not disapproving of the Earth X regime as much as he did. It's an interesting one. But this is where we have both vigilantes shooting the crap out of the cops storming the house. Things are getting insanely messy at this point in the episode. One cop even shoots Vigilante, which kind of, you know, made me think for a split second, oh damn, like, are they going to do something that people were theorizing about? But nope, he seems fine. And right as Peacemaker was about to enter the portal, we get Keith jetpacking right into him with nothing left to lose. And Chris at this point is just letting it happen. You know, and things just get brutal. Eagly tackles him to the ground, clawing him and carving him up. And this was just so messed up because you essentially have everyone he knows and loves tearing apart Keith. And I know I've talked about this in previous episodes as to how I felt like it would lead to a confrontation with Keith. I thought maybe it'd be drawn out over a couple of episodes. But this version of it, man, like, it just must be one of the most traumatic things for our Chris to witness, because despite everything and all of the context of whatever now, Chris is still watching his brother, who he's seen die before, once again die before his very eyes in the most graphic way, again, being torn apart by the people he knows and loves. So he tells everyone to get off him, and just hearing Chris's scream in that moment, like, man, that just really hit me. Cena, like John Cena, this was his best scene, I think, in terms of acting chops out of the whole season, at least for me, I think. And by the way, so was David Denman. He was absolutely incredible, you know, with all of Keith's exclamations of,
"What did you bring here? What is wrong with you? What did you do to us?"
His delivery was quite heartbreaking. And speaking of heartbreaking, of course, they had to chuck in a flashback of Peacemaker's brother actually dying in the past. And as this Keith seems to be dying, even though it seems like he doesn't later on, Chris is just having that crisis of self, even more acting chops from John Cena here, realizing that throughout everything, he sees himself as kind of the crux of every issue that he's faced, every loss that he's had. And even though, again, it's not that black and white, of course, you can totally see how, in his despair, subjective to him, how he's come to that state of mind. But again, man, Cena, hats off to him, because when he's like,
What's wrong with us? What the fuck is wrong with all of us?
that whole thing right there was just... And so everyone makes their way through the QC. Both vigilantes hug and say goodbye to one another. This part here, though, got a bit messed up. Harcourt asked Vigilante, the other Vigilante, I guess, to give her a gun to kill Keith because she can't really have him coming after Peacemaker, which, you know, I kind of get because Keith might not stop at anything to get revenge for his brother and now the loss of his dad. Again, this guy has nothing left. So he will be a revenge machine. But I was also concerned in this moment. I was like, oh God, are they really going to set up that thing where, you know, if Chris learned about this, then that would cause a wedge between them both, which would be very hard for him to get over. You know, despite what Harcourt has also had to put aside in the past when it came to Rick Flag Jr. and stuff, this would have just complicated things further. But Keith is saved by Detective Larry storming in the room. And the other vigilante, even though you could argue, what if they swap places? Like, I feel like that's going to be a theory from now on. Kicks the door shut just in time, where it kind of seems as though, yeah, his fate is unknown. He probably should have got shot and died, but technically you can't say that, but he still sacrificed his life. And this is when we get Argus storming Vigilante's mother's house. Thanks to Sydney's help, we get to see Keith being taken away by the paramedics. And again, guys, he has fury all over his face. And it makes me wonder, is he going to return this season as a next episode? I don't know. Or is he going to kind of be put on the shelf to be picked up again one day? Like, I'd be really game for that. Like, knowing that you have Captain Triumph wanting to kill the DCU's Peacemaker, and he could technically be brought up at any point in the next God knows how many years in the DCU. I think that would always be a welcome thing from me if we ever get another Peacemaker season, another story, another something. And Peacemaker is under arrest for illegal possession of a dangerous scientific device. And as they mentioned earlier on this season, Chris could be put away for a very, very long time. So overall, guys, enjoyed this episode. Great performances this episode. The confrontation as well, and the way things were just dismantled in those final moments. Just, it's such great chemistry between, I think, David Denman and John Cena. And that's what I love ultimately about Peacemaker, is I think that scene is what it is in a nutshell. It's, you know, this show can be so funny and stupidly funny at times, but it has this emotional depth to it that I think can, you know, even whole ass dramas where they're not remotely comedic at all can't even achieve at times. Do you know what I mean? I don't know how many of you would agree with that, but that hybrid of Peacemaker is what will always make it special to me. So I'm very intrigued to see if we're going to get anything like that in episode 8, or is episode 8 more about just the unexpected things that are coming our way to set up the future of the DCU. Now, speaking of episode 8, guys, like, don't forget, James Gunn said that he specifically pitched Peacemaker Season 2, Episode 8 to David Zaslav and Warner Brothers when just pitching the entirety of the DCU. So now getting into the teaser for the finale of Peacemaker Season 2, the very thing that sets up Man of Tomorrow, the little teaser that they make very brief at the end of each episode. Well, first of all, Gunn said that this episode will apparently be an hour-ish long. Thank you. I saw the episode length of this episode being 33 minutes, and I was like, well, that's with credits as well. So it's more like 30 minutes. I was like, not another 30-minute one. So it's good to know that we're going to have a lot more time to flesh things out next week. At the beginning of the trailer, Chris is in, I assume, Belle Reve, and he believes that he's essentially the angel of death, so he won't let Harcourt and others visit him, which, as we've gone over here, we can kind of understand why he thinks that. I don't know how he's going to get out of that. Maybe Harcourt's just going to demand to see him. And why would he get out of prison? Like, maybe they're going to need him? That's like, this is another thing. Like, he's sat in a cell now. Like, as if he's going to be sat in the cell for the whole episode. So, if you have any theories, let me know. The only thing I can think of is that there's something to do with Keith. He's interrupting their work. Maybe he demands Argus to hand him over. Otherwise, he's going to bring the full threat of Earth X to them. maybe through contacting up the chain, if you know what I mean. Maybe they want to use Chris as a dummy to explore the other dimensions. That seems more unlikely, though, because it looks as though we have Fleury doing that, even Harcourt being rehired by Argus because Flag's just going to help her out there. But yes, very clearly from this trailer, Argus, now equipped with a QEC that can lead to 99 other worlds, yeah, they start opening doorways to different worlds. And it looks like they're looking for something. Now, we've heard Flag say, to the benefit of us all. And, you know, as we hear Flag say in this trailer, we're going to find what we need in there, and everything we talked about is going to come to fruition. And we see them open the door to that Warhammer-like world with the kind of skull-like spiders, but then another kind of more grand doorway here, like something out of Wonderland mixed with Willy Wonka, as we see lollipops and gingerbread houses. And we can see that Harcourt is investigating this in that kind of hazmat suit alongside Fleury. I don't know if that's Bordeaux as well. And it seems that something invisible is approaching them. So I feel like it's just going to be, you know, what's behind each door? And there's some horrific, scary thing that tries to attack them in a lot of the doorways they go into. We also get that moment where Economos says to Harcourt, like, do we even know what we're looking for in there? And she says, resources, new ground for overpopulation. Now, granted, that seemed more speculation from Harcourt, and this is probably before they even start exploring the QUC doorways. Maybe she has heard something from Rick Flag Sr., but again, Rick Flag Sr. could have an ulterior motive. I just still want to know what it is. Like, is it truly for the benefit of us all? They want to find another space, some very kind of Black Ops government thing where if things go south, or if they want to use this kind of other Earth-like place that is barren and empty, they can for X, Y, and Z. Whether that's overpopulation, whether that's, I don't know, weapons testing where they don't need to screw things over on our Earth. And, you know, is it that simple? Or is, you know, maybe, yeah, technology retrieval, there could be all kinds of reasons. But is it still that simple? Or is there something else? But again, given that James Gunn said that he specifically pitched Peacemaker Season 2, Episode 8 to David Zaslav and Warner Brothers when pitching the entirety of the DCU, it makes me feel like the overutilization of this QUC tech and the exploration into these other worlds is maybe just going to open Pandora's box, so to speak, and just kind of bring something messier down the road going into Man of Tomorrow. Now, I've said that I would prefer, personally, well, I just don't really like the concept of summoning a villain from one of these doorways as the villain of Man of Tomorrow, so from another dimension. I prefer the idea of this energy, all of this QEC overutilization attracting a larger villain, like whether that's Brainiac or something else, but from our Earth, not from in another doorway. Now, there are also a couple of other shots that I'm curious about, like this framing of Harcourt looking up. Look up, people. She's looking up at Superman, and maybe no, but I don't know, though. But could she be looking up at something coming in for a landing? Maybe, but maybe not. Like, you know, we just won't know until we know. But it's one of those shots where you see it in a teaser and you can imagine it actually being from one of those moments where there is kind of like a cameo kind of cool thing from someone hovering and going in for a landing. But also the other shot that I'm curious about is this meetup with Bordeaux and Harcourt. Very intriguing, especially as, you know, maybe I'm reading too into this. It could just be them like cooling the air between them both as they really started off on the wrong foot, and now they're going to be working together. Maybe Flag Senior is like, look, before I bring you back in, you need to kind of make things cool with Bordeaux, because I know you don't get on with her. Could be that simple, or there could be more to this. I have had a weird feeling about Bordeaux this whole season. Like, is there some ulterior motive that she has? I don't know. Or is she just kind of really just like a trooper for Argus, and she's doing everything by the book, what she can do with her cyborg abilities? Or is there like a undercover checkmatey thing going on? And then we have the 11th Street kids just packing all the stuff from Vigilante's basement. Are they running to start a new life together? This doesn't feel like a beginning of the episode thing. Is this at the end of the episode where, despite whatever happens in the episode, they all realize that they're all happy so long as they're together? Like, Harcourt abandons her crisis this season of not being hired by any government agency, and so long as she has her friends, it doesn't matter. Like, Economos finally quits his job. Adebayo realizes that her security consulting doesn't matter, and things aren't working out with her. I don't know. But it just feels like them filling the bags. It's kind of like them getting away together. I'm not sure, but that's what I love about it. I'm glad that I'm not entirely sure about certain things in the finale. Like Peacemaker getting out of prison. Like, why? What could they find in the doorway? How does it tie into Man of Tomorrow? I keep saying this, but it's like, I don't want to get overhyped. Don't want to get too many expectations, so I'm going to keep them here, but it's hard to not, like, get, like, infatuated with the potential here. But with all that being said, ladies and gentlemen, let me know your thoughts on Peacemaker Season 2, Episode 7. Let me know your theories going into Episode 8. But I am going to love you and leave you. Looking forward to reading your thoughts down below. Other than that, guys, honestly, just thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a lovely rest of your day. And I'll see you, fellow 11th Street kids, in the next video. Goodbye.